Welcome everybody to a sponsorship morning coffee. Nick Lawson here from Squad, and although it is morning here, it is afternoon, evening over where Jan is over in Wolfsburg, Germany. Today I have Jan from Wolfsburg, VfL over in the Bundesliga. Jan and I have jammed a bunch on sponsorship, and with him going kind of through the restart, just wanted to get him on, chatting with us. So Jan, thanks so much for jumping on. Really appreciate the time this evening for you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, right, it's rather an afternoon coffee for me. It's 4 p.m. here. So I rather appreciate you getting on a call, 7 in the morning, I guess, on your end. So,
yeah, we've chatted about this. Usually we'll do the early morning call on my end, and it's just one of those things where when you talk with East Coast clients and you talk with European clients, the time you kind of have to finagle some of the time change. So for all you West Coasters, good morning. East Coasters, 10 a.m. Hopefully you're getting some things started. But really excited to chat with you today. In particular about sponsorship and how the Bundesliga really did the restart and kind of that effect, just because we have a ton of NBA and MLS teams and hopefully MLB teams kind of going through the same process. But before I get into that, for you, would love to kind of get your background story. How'd you get started in sports and sponsorship, and then ended up at Wolfsburg?
Yeah, happy to introduce a bit. So I guess it was rather kind of the, let's call it, traditional way. So always want to work in sports. Actually already was a huge US sports fan while growing up. Huge NBA, NFL fan, college sports. So I definitely wanted to do something. Always thought the financial sponsorship, sports marketing perspective is super interesting. So I started studying sports management in Germany, which is actually not that, I would say it's not that common than in the US, where it feels like you can study it anywhere. I guess back then we had about, 15, maybe 20 opportunities to study it in Germany. And then made my way there through a couple of internships. I actually made even the first steps within the Volkswagen world back then, because started with an internship at Porsche, also in the sports sponsorship division. Then did another one after studies with VfL Wolfsburg in the national sales department, and then kind of tried that they appreciate the work I'm doing, trying to make my way up there, and it wasn't always easy, but obviously in the end it worked out, and I immediately started in the international partnerships department then, and right now I'm here talking with someone from the US. So a couple of years ago I thought, well, that might be a great goal, and so pretty much grateful for the spot right now.
Nice. That's interesting that there's not that many kind of sports, I guess, marketing paths. Now they're in the US, now there's grad schools for it. Is that, I guess, over in Europe, what is that typical path to within a sports club or a sports team? Is it usually interning to get started, or is that kind of changing into, doing more of a sports marketing path at university or a program?
I think it really depends. So I would actually say, of course, I think a lot of boys and girls growing up like sports, want to work in that area. I mean, it's super tough. It's competitive, like in the US. I mean, there are not that many sports within each team where you can work there. And I still think in Germany, we have our kind of major leagues, and obviously soccer is way ahead, but we also have big basketball, ice hockey leagues, and so on. But still, in comparison to the US, with so many professional opportunities, even in the minor leagues, if I'm just thinking about it feels like a million minor league teams in baseball, where you can have a professional job and really make your way there. It is a bit different here. So if you're looking into the lower leagues, it's tough to really make a living out of it, I would say. But yeah, in general, of course, I think in our specific case at Wolfsburg, we have a pretty awesome internship program. So if you're in there, and we have like 30 interns, 25, 30 interns in all the departments. If you're doing a good job, I think at least obviously it's always about being at the right place in the right time. But you have a pretty good shot at making your way there. I guess it's kind of outstanding also in comparison to other clubs, but still, this is, I would say, a pretty popular or the main way making your way up there. And then obviously also you have a couple of, I don't know, maybe finance guys or so on that were either coming from another sector and just, spot opens up at the team and they apply. But I guess, the study way internship is the traditional one.
Nice. Again, before we get into the restart, obviously what we saw, overall was sports shutting down. One day sports were open, the next day sports were closed. Obviously, in sponsorship, we kind of had to deal with that. And for you all at the Bundesliga, you kind of were mid-season. What was how did you all deal with that a little bit at Wolfsburg, just with chatting with your partners once games started getting canceled and postponed when obviously the whole COVID and the shutdown of sports came?
Yeah, it was really kind of weird, and I guess I mean, it is a phrase that pops up everywhere. But we are all in this together, and we all had similar experiences, I would say, and it just happened so sudden. It was really like also in Germany, it was around this time before lockdown, beginning of March or so, end of February, where there were the first indications like, well, it's kind of getting over here, but no, the Bundesliga won't be affected. And then it was like, okay, maybe we should be a bit careful, and we just postponed one match day, and everyone was already like, well, I don't think it will be just this one, but the league was like, probably one is fine, that we see. And then it was just shut down, boom, everything was closed, and obviously this was tough, and I felt like, but this is not sports specific, right? I mean, we obviously the effects were pretty harsh on us, but there are other sectors in the economy that are way more affected, but still it was like before, like I think one week it was just like shock, and companies were shocked, we were shocked, nothing happens, everyone tried to sort things out for themselves. So this was obviously kind of a weird situation, because you already had this feeling like you have no idea what will happen. So it was interesting, but to be honest, right now looking back, and I mean we're just talking about like 2 or 3 months ago, right? It's kind of weird how this really feels right now. But back then I thought, whoa, this will be incredible tough, and we will suffer a lot from it. And obviously it was tough, and it is still tough, and we are by far not through it. But from a partnership perspective, in general, but especially also in my discussions or with our existing partners, I was way more anxious and afraid regarding how they will react. But I really feel like it's really solution-based. People try to figure things out. People try to talk and find solutions, and it's really partnership. So we're grateful for that. But obviously, tough situation still.
Yeah, and you all were kind of the first league, I guess, to open up. And you and I had conversations just about what does that mean? What does that look like in sponsorship? As you started learning, hey, we're going to get some matches back. It's going to be no fans. Did that, obviously it probably shifted the conversation you were having with your partners. What did that all of a sudden change for you all, and kind of how did you tell your partners about what's going to happen as far as, hey, we're getting restarted, but here's the situation of no fans?
Yeah, I think it's really if we're starting at the beginning, it's really like a process. So we try to be as transparent and communicative as we can with our partners from the beginning. So, which was maybe sometimes even tough to follow, because in the beginning you can imagine the league were like, okay, we don't know, we maybe start next week again, and now we postpone the next 2 match days, and then we will get together again. And we always try to update our partners and also the fans with the most important information, that they at least have kind of a roadmap how it could turn out. But obviously it was kind of difficult, and in the end, I think still, especially in these 2 months of let's say 2 months of shutdown and no games and everything, I think it was just really important to talk, to listen to your clients, to your partners, and I think it was really important. I mean, I remember that there was one quote from probably the greatest soccer coach of all times, Sir Alex Ferguson from Manchester United, who retired a couple of years ago, and he once said, like, there's a reason that we as humans, we have like 2 ears, 2 eyes, but just one mouth. So, and especially in this situation, I think this is an approach that you should probably go in all your kind of your life paths and so on, and also with partners. But especially in this situation, it was really not about trying to convince people of something, trying to convince partners of something, but really be there for them, just checking in, listen to them, see how you guys doing. And this was really important. And throughout this whole process, I think this was really a key to make them comfortable with the situations. Now, obviously, I mean, everyone is affected from this situation, but everyone in a different way. And also our top partner, the big ones, are affected in a different way than the smaller ones. And actually, we experienced that. We were really lucky and grateful that they stick with us, and they, as I said, trying to find solutions and these kind of things. But obviously, bigger partners, usually bigger companies. You have the smaller partners who are really like using us as an emotional networking platform at match days. It could be a local bakery around the corner, right? And I mean, they suffered. It's not like the big groups, but these small companies, they really suffered. And we had rather issues with them and trying to make them comfortable. And when we're talking about refunds and these kind of things, because for them, it's also huge money if we're just talking about some VIP seats or these kind of things. So, but in the end, it was really a lot about the whole build up to this restart. I think it was really an open process of communication and really checking in on an almost daily basis. Yeah.
Once you did have games coming back, obviously your fans aren't in the stadium, they're outside the stadium. What are some of the ways that you kind of connected partners with them as they're watching at home? And then, even especially for you kind of working in North America, now that, soccer was the only thing really coming back in the US, were there any particular ways digitally or whatever that is that once you did kind of get the games back, you were able to kind of connect those partners with the fans watching instead of being in stadium?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of obvious, and it's not rocket science, right? I mean, the shift to digital assets within the partnership packages itself, but also as kind of a make good for the games that just didn't take place, was kind of the key thing. And before that, we obviously, again, probably every team did this in a way, but worked with reviews and these kind of things. And also then in the build up to the games, when we restarted this kind of journey to the game, we all integrated more partners on social media and tried to activate, doing some home stories and these kind of things. But obviously, the shift to digital is like the key thing. And obviously, then you have like the first game, and you just say that. I mean, and I have to be honest, I kind of had mixed feelings regarding this. I mean, we started on 16th May, it felt like super early. And still, there were also partners who, for example, doing the in-stadium signage and being present there. In general, everything was fine, but there were still some concerns here and then, because also from a public perception, it wasn't like that everyone was like, yeah, woohoo, game's getting back, because still we have this pandemic going on here, and there's not enough testing and these kind of things back then. And so it was kind of a weird situation. So I think a couple of partners probably also thought, well, is it really that good for me right now to be kind of attached to this situation? But in the end, it worked out pretty well. And what we did then, for example, again, it all goes back again to this personal connection that you have with your partners and really trying to be there for you. So what we did, for example, with our partnerships team, we had a fleet of cars. We provided care packages. Let's say, care kits. So we have a beer partner, so they put in 6 bottles of beer. We have a snack partner, so they put in some snacks. We had masks that a social initiative in Wolfsburg put together. We had these care packages and brought them personally to our partner. Obviously, this was tough for me, so I couldn't go to the US to deliver a little package. But for the local partners to really be active in the community, this was this was huge. And I guess this kind of obviously always having in mind the social distancing and wearing masks and be safe and also keep your partner safe. But this kind of personal note really makes a big difference. And even in my case, it's insane how much like a little personal note, a little card that you just send and write just to check in, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, especially now, right? Especially when you're trying to get that relationship back comfortable with the partner, and obviously help them understand that games are coming back. We're going to try to get back to normal, and again, we care about you. Now, we're kind of a month into the restart, maybe half a month into the restart. For you, what were the kind of biggest challenges that maybe you weren't expecting along the way as games got going back again for you, whether that's partnership, whether that's, broadcasting, whatever that is?
Yeah, probably I can even just touch the surface of everything that's really in there when we're talking about this topic, because I saw the concept from the league and from the clubs. I have it in front of me regarding all the restrictions and guidelines regarding reopening, and it's tough. I mean, it's like a huge book, and there are so many restrictions in there, and just trying to setting up your venue in a way that you're. I mean, again, we were scrutinized on a hourly base, you could say, because again, it was and is still a tough situation, and it was like we were really. The government said. I mean, the concept was obviously good, and in the end, we're now 6 games into the restarted season, and as of right now, there are no bigger issues occurring, and it looks good, and the concept obviously worked, but still, people were really looking, and the government was really looking, okay, and if there would be any kind of mistake that we did on the way to the first game, I mean, they would say, well, no, nice try, but no, it doesn't work, it's too dangerous. And so I guess the pressure on the people that were actually having to set up these kind of infrastructural measures and so on, it was probably pretty tough for them. So from as I said, in our position, our jobs, taking care of partners, being transparent, talking to them, getting them up to date what happens. But for like the staff that's really really involved in the situation, it's a completely different thing, and again, even myself, so I'm not allowed in the arena for the games, right? So it's really just we have like 250, maybe 300 people in the arena. It's just the teams, the players, staff, referees. We have a couple of security guys, and the people who doing the broadcast and doing the production of the game. That's all. And still, I really have to say we're just really relieved that nothing happened, and it looks like, I mean, in the end we were rushing through the season. So usually our season ends at the end of June, and now, as I said, 6 games into the restarted season. We have 3 more to go, and then we're actually done with it by 27th June. And it looks like we can keep this plan, and I guess then, it is definitely a good thing right now.
Yeah, and as the season kind of ends, obviously in sponsorship, we usually kind of recap and see how things went, see how we can get better. For you, as you kind of talk to your partners with such a different, again, having to make good on things, having to, have a season end and then have it restart. For you all kind of going forward, looking toward next season, what's, have you all started those conversations yet? And if so, kind of what have they been around with partners toward, hey, thanks for sticking with us for this really tough season. Here's what we're thinking next season.
Yeah, as I said, we're first of all really grateful that we have these kind of really valuable discussions with our partners, and I guess it's like you have 2 perspectives, right? So we can really show in these kind of situations that we're there for partner, that we're a good partner, that we're reliable, and people don't forget that moving forward. On the other end, it's the same. So there are companies, even small companies, that are still kind of say, well, no, it's fine. We don't need make goods, and we're sticking with you for the next 2 years. No worries. And these kind of things. We won't forget that as well, right? So it's always like you have these 2 perspectives on that. And nevertheless, in our case, it's often like the contracts are kind of built up that you usually can quit the agreement or cancel around 31st March. So you can imagine this was like the worst possible. So pandemic, always terrible, but especially in this case, it was the worst possible timing for it. So I really imagine that it would be much worse regarding our partners in general. But obviously, it is just reasonable, right? As I said, if the couple of the local stores just can't afford it, we're just trying to find solutions and so on. But in general, if we are looking into, okay, what did we learn from this situation and what can we do to move forward, we're back in this digital thing, right? I mean, we tried a lot, and then also in different areas. I mean, we tried a lot to do with our esports team. So esports, obviously, again, a rocket science, everyone knows about it right now and how much impact you can have there. And we were actually the first soccer team in Europe who had an own esports FIFA team back in 2015. And obviously we use this now also as kind of a make good or add on for partners. We did a lot of online tournaments with partners and just using them, doing some kind of crossover with our esports players, with the actual first team players and these kind of things. So this is huge and obviously will grow and also will be a bigger part in the partnership packages. But then in general, yeah, I mean, don't need to tell you that. I mean, you build up your company because of that. People want digital and people start to understand that this is like, you want to have this in your packages and you want to get engaged with the fans and you want to really get close to the fans. And this just works through their mobiles, right? So it's really like, people asking for it now, partners asking for it. We do it as a make good. We're trying to find ideas together with partners and what can we do in the future moving forward. But it all surrounds this kind of digital asset,
Yeah, sometimes there's always questions of, and I get this sometimes from Europe or from people who are asking about the European market as far as fans using their phones in stadiums. Obviously, in the U.S., that's just a given that fans are going to have their phone, they're going to use it, they're going to look at it during breaks again. In the German market, is that other than the really diehard supporters that are obviously chanting the entire game. Is the use of smartphones kind of in stadium about the same as the US, or is there kind of a little bit of a difference there?
I actually would say it's pretty similar, but you really have to take a bit deeper dive into it. So you see this when we're working at a match day, our VIP customers, our fans in the stands. Let's be honest, everyone has his phone in his hands at least one time during the game. And you're checking the other results, what's happening. You're checking your social media, what's going on. You're posting something for your friends. And definitely, so 100% sure. And I would say it's similar like in the US. In our case, in Europe, and I guess, Nick, we talked about this before. It is kind of, we're in this position right now that you have to increase the kind of experience around the match day, and you have to get more digital activations in and more assets. But you have this like, it's like an interesting or tense situation of not doing too much, right? Because if I really compare the sports landscape in the US and in Germany or in Europe, you guys are really used to this. I mean, you need fireworks and you need singers and concerts and everything needs to sparkle and everyone goes crazy. And I think that's great because it's a whole experience, right? You're spending like the whole day around the game. In Europe, it's really rather more like, as you said, sports focused. And there are obviously people who say, yeah, I just want to watch my game and not too much commercial stuff. And no, that's really like, it's too loud. There are actually these kind of people. And still we see the same thing that probably every or almost every league right now experience, that the live attendance is at least decreasing a bit. And you really have to figure out creative new ways how we can get the people in the stadium and make them enjoy their time there. They're coming back. And so we're in this stage now. Yeah, definitely everyone is using his phone at a match day. And how can you start with the first small steps, like go step by step and make people get used to new initiatives and that it's fun and that it's more engaging around a match day and no distractions, because you have to find things to bring them in, but you don't want to give them kind of an information overload with new stuff, because this would probably scare them a bit. So we're in this stage right now, and that's why obviously for me it's super interesting that usually I'm so frequently in the US and seeing what's going on your end, to see what can we adapt and starting this process. And that's actually, and I don't want to make this an advertisement here, but that's why I like your product so much, because it's just easy. It's just easy. It makes sense. It's fun. You can use this as a great example of making this first step, right? Using your phone, doing something on the match day, and these kind of things. It's easy, it's simple, and effective. And I think building up on this, we will get there. Probably not to that extent like it is in the US, for example. But we also have to create this kind of game day experience around it and really increasing the offerings, but step by step and slowly.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point that sometimes though we do forget in the US, and that is as much as we love building up an experience and wanting to get you every little digital thing to kind of engage, a lot of people are going there for the game, right? To see the players play, to see the amazing moments. And at least for us as Squad, I want my activations engaging you when there's not gameplay happening. Just because obviously when that happens, what we see in the stadiums is the phone comes out and people aren't paying attention to you. But I think you bring up a great point is sometimes in the US, we do forget that, hey, fans are there for the game. That should kind of be that emotional first thing that we really want to engage with. And then kind of build off from there within those breaks of the game. Again, sometimes it just becomes a thing where, the game may be, I wouldn't say the last thing that fans are engaging with, but, there's so much going on that sometimes we forget that what's going on the field is the reason why they paid the dollars and came into the stadium. So going kind of back to sponsorship, for you all looking toward next season, in the US, I've been chatting with a lot of teams, even on this morning coffee segment of, prospecting, right? Like going out and trying to get new clients when, as we chatted about, there's just so much uncertainty and a lot of businesses have been hurt. Have you all kind of changed how you're, reaching out to new clients? Are new clients kind of put on the back burner on that? What's been the kind of that process for you all?
I would say it's obviously kind of tough. I mean, you really don't want to push people right now. You have to be sensitive, right? You can't just approach new prospects and just demanding money or anything. So obviously, I think the conversations right now rather circle around your existing clients and what you can do with them, and also your existing contacts that you already know, and trying to figure out creative solutions for a partnership and what you can do together to at least get a start. And then regarding completely new prospects, obviously you may be looking into a little bit different categories than you did before. So at least there are a couple of industries that are doing fairly well during this time. I mean, again, everyone is somehow affected, but obviously if you're thinking about nutritional supplements or telecommunications, deliveries and so on, obviously they are doing better. In the end, you don't know if they then really need a sports sponsorship because they're doing pretty good right now. But yeah, I think you really have a sensitive approach and maybe looking into a couple of new areas and categories.
Yeah, that's a great point, that there might be new categories that have opened up that haven't been there before that you can kind of tap into, especially if they're doing well and engaging. Now for you, in the main way, we've met up in Seattle and all of that. And we were just talking about, you spend a ton of time in North America. You were spending some time in China, which we were talking about time zones and how that just throws everything off. But, for you, can you talk a little bit about how Wolfsburgs kind of look to build its brand a little bit in the US market, and how, if any kind of partnerships have kind of facilitated that and pushed that forward?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. I mean, in the end, and probably, I think even listeners right now maybe don't know the brand necessarily. I mean, in the end, we're rather like a second-tier club in Germany, right? So you have like Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, and then there's a bunch of clubs where we're into this group. But obviously, we can't compete with Bayern right now regarding the brand strength or the recognition. But what's interesting in our case is that we're 100% subsidiary of Volkswagen, which is kind of unique because usually this is not allowed in Germany. There's kind of an exception rule in our case because we started as kind of a sports division for the employees within the Volkswagen group, and obviously this made us. It's already a couple of years ago, around 2012, that we discussed. Well, we are owned by the biggest car manufacturer in the world, and they have like existing networks all over the world. So we really have to make use of that, and you have this recognition of the brand Volkswagen. So we really have to use this on our for our advantage, or use the synergies. And in the end, I mean, our arena is just located across the street, so we can really, you could really say we can walk over there quickly and chat with them and going back and see what we can do. And so we started to also looking for partners overseas, or I would say like our core markets within VfL Wolfsburg are kind of aligned to the Volkswagen core market. So it's definitely China, number one, and then we're focusing on North America together with Mexico, which are huge. But yeah, China was always like the main thing, and I mean they are selling almost every second car in China, so it's kind of crazy, and the brand is super strong there, and that also made us being even the first team to go over there with the team back then and having a friendly match over there. And we opened up our office in China, in Beijing, which was pretty huge. And then started like this process. Okay, I mean, obviously it's also a matter of resources, right? It's not like we're super rich and can do that. So it's really like we're three people trying to conquer the world. So that's kind of tough. We have our office there now in China, and this is doing okay. And now we always did a couple of things, initiatives in the US, and obviously also at the Volkswagen location in Chattanooga, in Tennessee, in Herndon, Virginia, and where they at there, doing a lot of soccer camps, trainer programs. This is kind of how we started in China as well. We really try to, because we know and knew back then we will never be the biggest brand there. And the Premier League, they started like 20 years earlier than we going into these markets, Southeast Asia, China, US. So we can't compete, and we cannot close the gap. We have to be true to ourselves there. And so we really started to look at our core values, what's important for us, and where we're really good at. Not just trying to copy something or doing it halfway, but where are we really good? And what we are really good in is youth development. We have one of the best rated academies in Germany, and probably also in Europe. We have actually, I think we can say that one of the two best women's teams in the world, together with Lyon from France. And diversity, CSR, is a huge part of our whole organization and of our values. So we try to combine this and bring it into the markets. We did this in China. We have projects there running for like 3-4 years, where we have coaches going there, really living there, training there for years, building up structures, have smaller soccer camps and these kind of things. And we're now trying to have a similar approach. It obviously you can't adapt this exactly the same in the US, but also trying to use our existing kind of networks or locations with Volkswagen, the networks there, trying to use with trainer educations, camps, and these kind of things, and really having an impact on site. So in the end, probably you also have to say we're in the luxury situation that we're able to do this at the first place without always earning money. We have good structures, obviously, and we really want to have an impact where we go. So, and the US is a huge country, obviously, so I cannot fly to every state here and then. So we kind of need to focus on a couple of regions, and then we're really trying to find strategic partners first in the regions, trying to build up something with our youth development initiatives, with our diversity, CSR initiatives, with our women's team, and then trying to find strategic and then also, of course, commercial partners who kind of support these kind of initiatives. And this is still a long way to go, obviously, for us, but I think we're on a good way there, and we saw the success in China and trying to keep it up there. And now we want to really start in the US.
Yeah, no, and it's first very, very kind of smart to start with those youth foundations. Obviously, if you go to a Wolfsburg camp growing up, you're going to know what that team is, know the brand, build that reputation. But very, very intriguing kind of with the Volkswagen, initiative and synergy there, right? Just to where you can kind of leverage a bit it's not this, but almost the parent company to be able to open up some doors. Super intriguing on kind of the start. I'm curious. So, Volkswagen, obviously, the biggest, the biggest manufacturer in the world, but obviously within that city, I assume Wolfsburg's a very much Volkswagen kind of city and area. Obviously, other than kind of piggybacking off that, was the Volkswagen plant very, did they start the team of Wolfsburg? Kind of what's that history behind that brand, maybe the team and the relationship with the brand and the company?
Yeah, you could actually say so. I mean, and to get back to your point, I would be surprised if you find someone in Wolfsburg or living in Wolfsburg who has not any kind of relationship to Volkswagen. Either you work there directly, you work for a supplier, your parents work there, or whatever, or you're working for VfL Wolfsburg. So there is some kind of relation, and it was really rather like, and you're right, it is a small city. We have around 125k inhabitants, and it was really rather like there was Volkswagen, and then the city built around it. So they were first, you could say. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we started like the club was founded in 1945, and we started it was like a sports division, a sports group within the Volkswagen world. And obviously, sure, they had the financial means to push the team a bit, invest in the team. Then when they decided to make football or soccer team out of it, in the end, in a couple almost 25 years ago now, we reached the first division, and then we stayed there. But in the end, if you kind of follow the Volkswagen initiatives a bit, and again, this goes back to also in the US, even if you don't know VfL Wolfsburg, you probably heard of Volkswagen or Porsche or Skoda or Lambo. So there are so many brands within this Volkswagen group, and they're well known. We can at least somehow benefit from that, and because we're their soccer team, and obviously they're doing also really a lot in youth development, and they have some great initiatives there all around the world, and they're really focusing on soccer. And you probably noticed that they became the main partner or the presenting partner of the US soccer body, investing a lot into youth development initiatives there. And we're, as their kind of club next door and being owned by them, we are obviously also their kind of main marketing tool, and we can really have an impact on site as kind of their arm in a certain market, and obviously similar values, just always trying to be aligned regarding that, and have some great impacts on site.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's very intriguing. I mean, I can't think of any U.S. teams that kind of pulled from that. I mean, obviously you'll usually have the more wealthy owners of a team around a company, just because they built their wealth with the company, and that city was the company. But love that you're able to kind of piggyback off of that as you grow, grow into different markets, to where some teams don't kind of have that ability to be able to do that. I've always been curious, and Wolfsburg, I'll knock on wood, Wolfsburg right now is in no trouble of being relegated down, just because fighting for that sixth spot. But how much does because in the US we don't have relegation, right? I mean, it's the USL is trying to brought up a proposal to maybe do some relegation with MLS. Usually it's you're a USL team, and maybe you pop up when you have the right financial incentives. But for you on the partnership side, how does being relegated down or relegated up kind of affect your brands and your partners that you work with?
It's huge. I mean, it's kind of security, right? If you're known that you're in the first league, because obviously it's not that insane like in the Premier League, where you really like you're getting rich when you're entering the Premier League from the Championship, and even if you get relegated there, I mean, you get like a 90 million pound kind of emergency fund that you don't screw up completely. But in our case, still it's the same. So the difference between the first and the second division is still kind of huge. And there are teams that maybe don't have the most suitable structures that are getting relegated from the first league. And even if they have maybe in the next year still have more means than other clubs in that league, they can't get right up again. And then you're being in this kind of downward circle, and it is really tough to getting back where you were then. And you really have to be in the first league to get the bigger TV money. I mean, we have some kind of allocation process there, but it's tough here. And you mentioned it. It is way different from the US. So we don't have franchise systems here. And actually, this was also one reason when we were getting back to the start of the discussion, where it was also really important that we started that early, because a couple of the clubs were really like in danger and probably would have to fight for their existence if we didn't restart the league, so that we can fulfill our contracts with the TV broadcaster, because there is no one who can bail you out. You have no rich owner usually, and so this was kind of a tense situation back there. But obviously, relegation is tough, and we know what we're talking about. I mean, we had two really rough years a couple of years back where we almost got relegated, and this would be huge. I mean, as I just mentioned, I mean, we always want to compete for the international competition, and we're in there right now, and it looks, at least right now, it looks pretty good with 3 games to go that we're competing international next year again. But just imagine, with all the things you want to do in the foreign markets, what we want to do in China, in the US, and Mexico, and Canada, this would be tough to argue when you're in the second division, right? So it's really, the difference is still there, definitely.
Yeah, and it's, kind of think of the US, version. We have our draft, and obviously it's much different than player transfers and academies and all that. But, if NBA teams were in danger of being relegated, they would not tank the season to try and get the first round draft pick, right? So it's, it's one of those things where, I'm a Warriors fan, grew up in Oakland, and once Steph gets hurt, the Warriors pretty much tank the season. Nothing against the players that were playing, but it was hey, let's tank, let's get a lottery pick, either we'll trade them or that. And, just thinking toward the relegation system, and you can't tank. I mean, it's, there's
just no incentive at all. There's no incentive to really be bad.
Yep.
If you're bad, you have problems. Yeah.
And it's, the financial implications of being bad. I mean, to be honest, the financial implications of being bad as a US team is not that bad, because you're going to get a top round draft pick, and that's going to be the buzz that you can build off of going into next season. Again, in Premier League and Bundesliga and all the other kind of international leagues, it's, if you get relegated down, it's, there's nothing good that comes from it. Like, literally, I can't think of a single thing good, just because you're not getting the same reach. So partnership agreements, maybe some of the players are, being a little bit overpaid considering they're being in the lower league. And I think in the US, talking to a lot of international clubs, we forget that a lot, to where, again, it's, if I get the first round, if I get the number one pick, I'm all of a sudden, my awareness and value to sponsors, I can live off of that. Over in Europe, if you have a bad season, it's, and especially for you in partnership, I mean, you obviously have no control over that piece of it, and it drastically affects, your partners and kind of how they engage and compete on that end. So it's always intriguing. And in the US, I think, we forget that piece of it and how it is over in Europe, to where there are major dollars on the line if your club doesn't perform on that side.
Sure. I mean, I think all the systems have kind of advantages and disadvantages, right? I mean, it would be really, really hard to adapt it here even in a certain way, but I think it's interesting, and I often have these talks also with friends or colleagues. It would be interesting to have a salary cap. I don't know if a soft one or a hard one here in Germany, but to have a salary cap would be interesting. Our whole system just doesn't work like that. So Freiburg will never be able to pay the same salaries like Munich, even if I don't know, Freiburg would up to 50 million and Bayern would go down to 50 million. They would just don't have the money. And if there's no kind of allocation system behind it, that the money that or the revenues that Bayern is generating through Champions League and all these kind of things were kind of allocated somewhere, which there's no reason for them to do, then it's tough to implement this kind of system. But just trying to figure out a way or thinking about how it could work is kind of interesting. And I think in general it is a good thing.
Yeah. It's always interesting to look at two different systems, right? It's, hey, how much would this help over there? How much would this help over here? And kind of see that and even then, I think with the MLS market, it kind of clashes a little bit, right? Just because I don't think we will ever be in the position to go Champions League until we adopt some of the European salary cap and things like that, just because there's a mismatch. And to be honest, the systems are so different that, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for the European clubs to allow the US clubs kind of into that mix or into that system, just because MLS does a draft and, there is a designated player, kind of limit of how many players you can have, designated players and all that. So it's interesting. I'll be really interested to see how the US market evolves, whether it decides to go its own path and say, here's what we're going to do, or whether it kind of says, hey, look, Europe's been doing it for, centuries. We should probably, do that and kind of go that path. For
I think it's
getting back. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, didn't want to interrupt, but I think this is really the two systems are so deeply rooted in the sports landscape and also government related things and so on in the certain countries. You probably won't be able to change that, and it would take years. Also regarding, as you just said, you have a draft, you have a college system. We don't have that in Europe. Every team has their own academy, and you can be good there or you can be bad there. But there's no college system at all. We have no competitive college league in general, for example, in soccer. So it is completely different. But still, I think it's interesting for us to look to the US and see what are maybe smaller things that we can try to adapt. What can we adjust here when we're looking at them? And same as you said for the MLS and other major leagues, to just trying to think, okay, maybe there are certain things where we can really look into it and it could make sense to try something new there.
Yeah. There'll be an inflection point to where MLS gets big enough to be in the conversation of should our clubs be in Champions League, and it'll be interesting to where that goes, right? Like what path does that lead to kind of at that inflection point? Obviously it's not right now, and I think you're spot on. And clubs are getting better at their academies. The Timbers have a great academy here.
Sure.
In Portland, and I know the Sounders do as well. And USL teams are starting to kind of come up and be a little bit of those academies for their club teams they're affiliated with. But it's it'll be intriguing kind of where that ends up, how everything shakes out in the next 10, 20 years, whatever that may be, kind of on that end.
Sure.
For kind of getting back a little bit to sponsorship, for you all, obviously 3 games left, you're kind of engaging and make goods and all of that. What does the off season kind of look like for you all? And then, kind of looking toward next season, what predictions do you have kind of for Bundesliga? I mean, are you predicting that things kind of start getting a little bit back to normal? We get some fans in the stadium. What's kind of your outlook just on this off season and the next season?
We have no idea. So if everything goes as planned, our season will finish on 27th June. As I said, this is usually our league year ends at 30th June, and the next one starts at 1st July. So it looks like we can, if everything goes well now, knocking on wood, then we can keep up with that. But what happens then? No idea at all. there's still so many things to figure out. I mean, we're still part of the Europa League. We played one leg there. It's a KO system. So the UEFA has no idea how it goes on right now. Now they're discussing like, okay, having it also played like just in one city, so a bit similar to the NBA and MLS finishing in Orlando. So just try to finish it within just maybe 2 weeks in a certain city, or at least in a certain area where you have a couple of arenas. But still, there's nothing official yet, and when you want to do it. And then you have this off season in the summer. I mean, usually we're finishing around mid-May. Now we're finishing end of June. Usually we're starting the next one around second, third week of August. So this will go somewhere probably at the end of September, something like this. And so you have no idea right now how it will affect the schedule, the next season. Really, there's so much to figure out, and in the end, you can't always push it back, right? And just try to push the circles back. I mean, in the end, we already skipped the European Soccer Championship this year. These Olympic Games were postponed, so this will all happen now next year. So it's not like we could again finish the season like in July next year, because we have these major events there. So you actually have to get back to some kind to your usual playing schedule, and this will be tough, definitely. And then you have the next upcoming Europa League and Champions League season. So will be interesting to see. But so that's what makes it also a bit harder, obviously, with partners in discussion and what you can do with them and what you can really offer them as well. And also, you just mentioned it, and I would also love to get your perspective on this, shortly, because you're talking to so many teams, and I know that, I mean, the product is great, the activation is great, and obviously you can also use it great as engaging. So, with, for example, the mobile scratches from Scott, you can obviously also use it as an off-season tool, just keeping fans engaged. But your main focus, obviously, is engaging the people in the arena. So, would also love to get your perspective later on, or what you are thinking or hearing from teams, because as of right now, if I'm not completely wrong informed, mass events right now in Germany are kind of prohibited until 31st August. This will probably be extended, and I'm not sure if we will have fans back in the stadiums this year, and I also don't know if it really makes sense. And you know, the thing is, obviously, a lot of the partners who have like in stadium or non-TV stadium relevant advertisement or promotions or game day activities, obviously they rely on the fans to come in. But the other thing is, and this is why I'm curious about your opinion as well, you know, it is great if we have to get people back in, and it is great if we're being able to do this. But even if I'm now seeing, like, I don't know, was it Texas having like said, okay, 20-25% of the capacity we will do, that's cool, that's great, it's a great first step. But if you just let like then, I don't know, 20,000 people in the stadium, or in our case, our stadium fit 30,000 people. If you just put like 8,000 people in there, they feel it looks kind of lost in the arena then. And just imagine, I mean, you're supposed to having fun there, right, at a game. And with all the restrictions and things you have to keep in mind, I mean, probably you would, I'm just really like imagining this myself, but you have to come maybe exactly 2 hours before the game, because this is the time zone. We have like 50 minutes where your kind of row in the arena enters through a specific entrance, and you have to go through certain technology stuff, and you have to be checked and controlled. Then there's this crowd control thing that you can just enter there. You have a specific way to your seats. It's tough to go to the restrooms, tough to get food. You have to exit on another area and these kind of things. Obviously, there are a lot of things you have to keep in mind to just making it a safe event. And then probably atmosphere is also rather kind of tense and not as we know it, because there are not that many people in the stadium. And I don't know. This is like if it comes like this, I don't know, probably a couple of people, or also the father with his 2 sons, with a family, probably might get back to the thought, well, our couch, our garden is actually quite comfortable, so maybe we just stay home and watch the game there and make us a nice evening, instead of having this hassle in the arena. And I hope it won't play out this way, but we have to keep it in mind, I guess.
Yeah, it's intriguing, and I think you're spot on with your main point is nobody knows, right? It's all the experts that get on and say this is what it's going to look like, and this is how fans are going to engage, and I mean, to be honest, nobody has any idea. And obviously, we can look back to the Spanish flu and how that affected sports, but it's a totally different world, right?
Yeah.
Of technology, engagement. It's funny, before we were fighting the couch of people just watching from home. And what we always, went back in my brief time in ticket sales, what you would always say is, well, it's the atmosphere of the game. Nothing beats the atmosphere of a match that, you can really, have a great time as an experience. Obviously, if you can only allow 25% of people into your stadium, I mean, that experience is not going to be great. I mean, unfortunately, as an Oakland Raiders fan, I've been to stadiums that have been, empty at some points because we're not doing so well. And it's one of those things where, a more empty stadium, there's not as much of that excitement and that engagement. On the flip side, from a sponsorship side, sponsors are definitely going to, I wouldn't say have a problem, but you're going to have to convince them pretty well that only reaching 8,000 fans is worth it for them to keep paying that premium price for that sign. And, it's one of those things where, do you cater to the people who are at home watching and make it more comfortable for them, which is, somewhat bad, because when games do get back, now you have to break that cycle. Now you have to convince them that, they should come back out to the stadium and kind of engage with their club. On the flip side, again, it's if you do that, you're building places where sponsors can engage. But then when games come back, how do you resell that sign? And I think the big thing is just, we've been, in sports, we've been kind of going down this path, whether it's trackability of assets, how trackable something is. A sign is hard to track, other than saying this many people saw it and here's your recall, right? Like, you can do studies on recall. Obviously, a Facebook ad, a Twitter ad, any kind of digital ad, you can actually, you can see everything. You can see if they landed on your website, they purchased, did they come back, and all of that. So we were kind of at this place where digital ads were more trackable. We needed to get more digital. This pandemic kind of exposed us a little bit to say that, we relied on one thing for so long and now we don't have it. How do we adjust? So I think what it has done is it's opened up so much more inventory, in inventory that our sponsors are going to want because it's trackable. But I do think that, to be honest, I think sponsorship departments are just going to kind of have to wing it. I mean, you can make a plan for 25% full stadium, and then 2 weeks later, a vaccine comes out and we're pretty much good. And now, you have a ton of people in the stadium. Or 2 weeks later, it gets worse and it shuts down again. I think the biggest thing for teams is in what we've been trying to push, whether it's our activations or something else like, Facebook activations or engagement, is build up that digital, because that digital will survive anything, right? If you have a digital asset, whether you have games or you don't have games, or you have stadiums full or you don't, you can go to utilize that. Then when games come back, you have double the assets or the inventory to kind of engage with. So that's, again, as somebody who's just talking with teams and trying to help them and kind of engage, that's the big thing that I always try to stress is, let's get a scratch and win up, just because you have no idea if fans are going to be in the stadium. And
Right.
this partner wants to hand out coupons. Well, if you're back in the stadium, great, hand out coupons and do the digital one for people who aren't in the stadium. If they're not, though, and you haven't done some sort of activation like this or set that up, then you're going to be sitting there saying, well, we can't do this because we thought we had fans in the stadium. So I think,
Right.
I think digital kind of as a contingency plan is really important right now. Even if you're not even like, you just have a plan, right? Of here's what we're going to do in each of these scenarios in case fans don't come back in case games get canceled again. But I think coming out of it, it'll be very powerful, because when we do get our atmospheres back, you're just going to have more to sell on. You're going to say, hey, look, for the fans who can't make it to the game, here's how we're going to interact with them. Instead of, I wouldn't say shaming them, but a lot of times we would say, no, like in the US, we locally we black out games if you're not in, if it doesn't sell out, and this happened all the time, unfortunately for me as a young Raider fan. But if it didn't sell out, they didn't play it on local TV. And we used to actually take the subway to the game, and there was one place in the stadium where you could see the scoreboard. So we would like take the subway out, stand in the parking lot, and watch the game right there in Oakland. And I think what will be intriguing is, instead of utilizing tactics like that to pull you into the game, make the in-game experience good, but also don't make the out-of-game experience any less, right? Like, don't put restrictions. And then again, you're selling different things. You're selling atmosphere, you're selling engagement, and being there with the team. That will come back. In the meantime, you got to build up your assets, right? Like, you unequivocally, you have to have digital. And you all are seeing it at Wolfsburg, and most teams are kind of seeing it now as like, we have to have this, whether we fully understand it or not. We have to have these assets, because my biggest worry in the US is we get games back and then we get another spike, whether it's a player gets the virus or tests positive, whether it's we get back in the stadium and it comes to find out that one game, even at 25% capacity, was a big reason why it spread and spiked kind of on the number of people who have it. And I think, sports can't survive that second wave, just meaning if you don't have the digital assets and that happens again, like, we can't get caught off guard. Some teams are surviving without digital. Next time that wave comes, you don't have digital. I don't think you can survive it. Again, what this has done is build up contingency plans of, if sports ever shut down ever again, there will be a case study of, here's how you do it, here's how you engage. So that's a very long-winded answer to say, it's fine with not knowing, but I think the key thing is building up some of the supply of sponsorship stuff or assets and activations that you can then go apply no matter what happens. And again, for us, it excites me because we've been pushing digital for a while, and it hasn't been necessarily a necessity, and now it is a necessity. And I'm excited that when it goes back to not maybe being a necessity for teams, you just have more stuff you can sell. So actually,
I couldn't agree more about this. And if you want to see any kind of positive thing that comes out of this pandemic, it's like in other business areas, right? That you have, at least it was kind of it is kind of an accelerator for digitization in the economy, within businesses, working from home, and also on the sponsorship and partnership side. Teams have to build up these kind of digital inventory and assets to be prepared, to have something to offer. And at least a lot of teams are forced right now to really consider these kind of things. So not to say that there's anything good going on right now, but at least, a couple of things need to happen right now, and it is kind of obvious.
Yeah, I always use the example. There's a Portland restaurant here that I love to go to. It's on the other side of town, but they've never had mobile ordering. So you always had to call in, then you had to go get it. And the pandemic forced them to have mobile ordering. And to be honest, I've never purchased more of that restaurant's food than ever. And even if I'm able to go and sit down at a restaurant, because they have mobile ordering, and it's not through a Grubhub, so it's it's pretty much 100% their money is through their website. They're now going to sell more, probably from everybody, but definitely from me, by having it, right? And the pandemic kind of forced them into that. I think the same thing with sponsorship. It's once we have it now, we're going to sell more because of it. And obviously, it was a terrible situation in order to kind of have that happen, just like for the restaurant. But once we have more of that, then it makes it so that in the future, when we do get started and going back to normal, that we can actually sell more because we have more inventory. And it's inventory sponsors want, just because brands are spending more on digital than they ever have before, kind of for advertising. So it'll be interesting. But I think to your key point, as people are kind of tuning in, nobody knows what's going to happen next season. And,
right.
The big thing is try and set up so that you're prepared for everything, right? And that doesn't mean implement everything, but try to set up to have a plan so that you're not caught off guard when something does happen. But as much as we can say, hey, we're going to get this back and get this back, all it takes is just one thing to totally take that all away. And you kind of have to be ready for it.
Yeah, sure. That's also, again, why it will be really interesting to see how we figure this out with bringing people back into the stadiums. I mean, yeah, as long as there's no vaccine and we can't do anything about the virus and the pandemic, it would be interesting what kind of measures we will have to take. And yeah, also there, I mean, you mentioned the gap between like the best teams, and especially in our situation where you don't have franchise system. Bayern Munich probably can afford having a high-tech system around the arena, scan body temperature and so on. But what will the smaller clubs do if this is a necessity to do it? So there are just so many things we will have to figure out. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yep. Yeah. If nothing else, we'll tell our grandkids about the 2020 pandemic and how we saved sports and we worked through it and all of that. So that'll be, if for nothing else, it'll be a good story to kind of tell as we kind of get through it all. Jan, thanks so much for your time, for jumping on this morning for us, this afternoon for you all. If people want to learn a little bit more about Wolfsburg and maybe even catch one of those 3 games, what's kind of the best way to interact and connect with the team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're on all social channels that you can imagine. Fox is providing the games. They're broadcasting it. Whoever wants to tune in. We're playing Bayern Munich at the last game day, so obviously this will be shown.
Nice.
We'll see if this is a good promotion for our club or not. But so always happy to, whenever there are questions, anything I can do, just reaching out and we'll figure something out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jan. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and jamming with us. And remember, keep pushing those limits within sports sponsorship.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yep.